Every March, shallow coastal waters and select inlets along British Columbia's coast turn milky green for a few days. Vast quantities of milt and roe are deposited among the seaweed and eelgrass by the Pacific herring.
Most of the herring spawn is not much deeper than 10 meters, with a few exceptions, and not much higher than the mean low water.
The arrival of the herring in these waters creates a spectacle and a frenzy of activity.
Herring biologists who work on Atlantic, worked on herring in the Atlantic, have never seen what we can see. They can spend a lifetime, a career, studying herring and never see what we can see in 10 minutes walking down to the shore.
Seabirds gorge themselves on the nutritious eggs.
They like to spawn on vegetation, and their favorite spawning vegetation in the Strait of Georgia is called sargassum, which is a weed that came in with the oyster from Japan well over 100 years ago, but they love it.
Sea lions converge on the area by the hundreds to feast upon the herring.
The herring spawn on the east coast of Vancouver Island is the largest in British Columbia, and it's probably the largest in the in the eastern Pacific, between California up to the Gulf of Alaska.
And fishing boats have a narrow window of opportunity to drop their nets and haul in their quota of this small silver fish and bring it to packing plants destined for a variety of markets and uses.
In the last 2 decades, herring in the Strait of Georgia have reached historical highs. They are about as abundant as we've seen them as measured over the last 70 or 80 years.
Detailed records of herring spawns in British Columbia have been collected annually since 1928.
We think that once they reach age 3, about 36 months of age, they spawn for the first time, and they'll spawn every year thereafter until they die.
It's estimated one herring will lay about 60,000 eggs during its lifetime, but only about 1 in 10,000 will survive.
The oldest herring that we've seen in BC, I think, is about 15 years old, but most of them will probably expire before they reach their 8th or 9th birthday.
Technicians examine fish from random samples taken during the fishery to determine the age composition in an attempt to anticipate the return in a few years. Pacific herring have had an arduous existence on our coast. In the late 1960s, populations crashed from overfishing and poor recruitment conditions.
In those days, the catches were somewhere between 150 to sometimes 200,000 tons, which is 10 times what's taken these days.
Doug fears there is too much focus on the herring fishery when we should be examining other variables that affect herring, such as changes in salinity, temperature tolerances, and the effects of industrial pollution and domestic waste in the Strait of Georgia.
One thing we don't understand at all is the effect of pharmaceuticals. Herring, when they spawn, release milt, and this milt it acts as a pheromone for herring. It induces spawning. It acts on the endocrine system. So when we have elements in the sewage that might be also producing those effects, it might affect herring in ways we don't understand, and that is something I think we should be looking at.
Many feel the health of the herring is tied to the health of the entire food chain.
So far, no one's been able to make new spawning habitat. You can't go to the store and buy it. What you see is what you got. So I think to a certain extent, we need to protect it as much as possible. We need to identify it, protect it. Can't protect everything, but we can protect the most sensitive areas.
Witnessing this biological event that happens in the waters off central Vancouver Island is truly an extraordinary experience. In Nanaimo, I'm Annette Lucas.